Hello and welcome to the Loving Compassion podcast with Giselle. We believe that love and compassion have the power to heal our lives and our world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. This year, we're creating an inspiring documentary called Courage to Love, The Power of Compassion, which explores the extraordinary stories of those who have chosen to do the unthinkable, love and forgive those who have caused them deep harm. Through their journeys, we will uncover the profound impact of forgiveness, not only to those offering it, but also those receiving it. And we'll hear from experts who will explore whether love and reconciliation are part of our human nature and how we can bridge divides with those we disagree with. We are launching a fundraising campaign in March, offering incredible perks to our supporters. If you're interested in our documentary, know somebody whose story should be featured, or would like to contribute financially, stay tuned. Speaking of divided, today's topic is about how to love others during divided times. Our guest today is Scott Stabile. He is a breathwork facilitator and author of the acclaimed motivational memoir, Big Love, The Undeniable Joy of Following Your Heart. The short prose collection, Enough as You Are, and the inspirational art book, Just Love. A passionate love advocate, Scott is a compassionate and soulful storyteller, unafraid to dive deep into the human experience. Through his books, talks, personal empowerment workshops, and Substack newsletter, Scott invites us to choose love even in the darkest times, to fully embrace our messy, beautiful selves. He's not just a teacher, he's a fellow traveler, navigating the hard, sacred work of being human. Please join me in welcoming Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Giselle.
Hello. I'm
Hello,
so
hello.
excited to have this chat. It feels like if we're just living in such a divided world, it feels like we're almost living in two separate worlds of people that are, wanting to love and have compassion. And then this other group that is maybe struggling with that. And it feels like we're more divided than ever. Um, I was wondering if you could start by telling the audience how you got into the work of love.
How did I get into the work of love? I would say the most honest answer is I was in a cult in the in the Bay Area in
Oh,
the
wow.
90s. In my early 20s, I got involved with a spiritual teacher and a spiritual community. And the teachings from my former guru were, love, unconditional friendship. It didn't end up turning out that way when I mean, it ended in a very dark way, which I won't go into right now.
Oh, wow.
But when I reflect back on those times, I was really consumed with enlightenment and the
Mm,
possibility of becoming
yeah.
enlightened. That's what I cared about the most. And what I saw as the path to enlightenment was love and compassion and forgiveness and all of these beautiful energies that we
Yeah.
know when we're engaging with those energies, we feel so much better. And what I came to discover when I decided that I didn't want to be a part of this community anymore, and that when I was going to let go of chasing enlightenment, when I realized it's not something that I could achieve, that's not how enlightenment works, that I still felt called to be as loving as possible and as compassionate as possible.
Mm,
Nothing changed about me other than my drive to become enlightened, which only created for me a lot of suffering and misery,
yeah.
honestly. And when I could let go of that, I was able to just bring more acceptance to who I was and who I am in the moment rather than needing to be a more evolved version of myself. So
Mm,
that's what really started me really seeing the healing power of love in our lives and really committing to being directed by that energy as much as possible. And it's only because it's not because I'm some selfless Buddha, it's because it feels good to love. And we know that it
yeah.
feels good to offer compassion to others, it
Yeah.
feels good to forgive. All of these things for me are the most beautiful way to feel. And I want to feel good, as often as I can. So this is the path that I've chosen to create that possibility.
You said so many powerful things. The first thing I want to tackle is I have found in my experience that there are many groups that kind of co opt the whole love and compassion piece and use it for their own. It's very similar to the whole concept of God and religion and how some of these messages are co-opted for their own purposes, not for the purpose of love and compassion. Has that
Mm.
been your experience?
Well, if I feel like if I'm understanding what you're saying, it's the idea that there are any number of people out there preaching certain things who aren't acting in alignment with what they're preaching. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, basically. So it's like it's teaching that love and compassion is the way, but not towards those people. You
Or
can't
they're not?
exclude certain groups if you're going to teach love and compassion. Yeah.
Absolutely. And honestly, yes, 100%. I think we're seeing that in all different ways across, certainly in the US. I know you're in Canada, in this country for sure, and in probably most countries around the world. But what I'm seeing though is it's from every direction, right? Like I think it's very easy to look at the people who are on opposite political arenas than who we are and see them as the people who aren't speaking up for love and compassion, right? The laws they're seeking to put into place or the way they're talking about certain communities, it feels extremely devoid of compassion, right? And what
Yeah.
I'm noticing and have been noticing is that those of us, many of us who are like compassion and love are being wildly dehumanizing and shameful toward those who aren't speaking up for love and compassion in the way that they see as appropriate. So it's really coming from all directions. And I'd say, Janelle, honestly, for me, that's been one of the more disheartening aspects of the past several years is seeing whole groups of people with whom I've felt deeply aligned show up in ways that for me are extremely ugly and not anything I want to be a part of. I'm not interested. I'm clear about my convictions, generally speaking, I believe. And I know in politically speaking, I'm much more progressive in my politics. That's the where I steer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet I don't align with a lot of what I see in the progressive community because there's so much dehumanization and shaming of those who don't feel the same way or believe the same things. And I can connect to that because when I'm in my mind and when I'm in my ego, I am as dehumanizing and shaming as any other person on the planet. And it doesn't feel good. And I don't believe it helps anything. So for me, the invitation is always, well, how can I get back into my heart? And when I am in my heart and when I am aligning with the energy of love, what is that communication? And for me, that communication is always to find empathy and compassion for other human beings, no matter how they're showing up. And by doing so, it doesn't separate me in any way from my convictions or for what feels most important to me or from what I'm going to talk about. It simply connects me to the deepest truth I know, which is that without love, healing cannot be created. You need love for healing. So that's where my commitment lives.
Yeah, yeah,
What about
and
you? Do you have a
completely
thought?
agree. And I think that's been one of the challenges. I've been interested in understanding love for a very long time. First, I did it in the way from in terms of its absence, right? I worked within the child protection system, child welfare, to understand what the absence of love looks like. And so one of the things I've come to realize is that if love is truly the answer, as the spiritual teachers say it is, I have to be willing to love those that I deem unlovable, whose
Yes.
behavior seems so hurtful and so just purposeful. I have to be willing to see their humanity so that they can see mine. I cannot use the same strategy and isolate them and other them that they're doing. And that's hard, Scott. It's so
Yes.
hard. Because I think one of the things I've realized is that one of my triggers has been injustice. Like when I see the little guy, I'm like, I got to fight for the little guy.
Mhm.
But one of the things I realize is that that's also disempowering for the little guy. That person has power. They have power. They always have power in their present moment. So feeling bad or sorry and all of that is disempowering. But it feels so hard to love during those moments. How do you do it?
I don't always do it successfully. I'm just really committed to doing it. Like what I would say one thing I want to say to what you just said too is that I feel like if in your heart you're feeling called to stand up and be a voice for those, who are enduring the injustices, that's a beautiful thing. I don't think that that has to in any way be disempowering if your energy is
Hmm.
about support and empowering
Yeah,
others, right? I think it's like what we
agreed.
bring to our activism is what we bring. That's the energy we're going to create.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think hating people is easy, right? Like finding love when it would be so much easier to just hate or
Agreed.
shame is some of the hardest work that we can do. And I guess for me, it's about first and foremost understanding I do not believe that someone is not worthy of love. That is just not how I operate. It's not what I understand to be true. So I know that if I'm unable to access love in my heart for someone, no matter how abhorrent I find their words and actions, that there's work for me to do because I can only take
Mm.
responsibility and control how I'm showing up and the example I'm setting. I profess myself to be this love activist, and I'm always talking about love and self-love. So how am I modeling that? And then also, Giselle, offering myself a tremendous amount of grace when I find myself caught up in the mental struggle and the judgment, and I get lost in just the there, like the thing that we all
And
do.
then
It's
you're
like,
like, oh my God, what is,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
part of
yeah,
the experience. It's like, and also I don't kind of what I'm sitting with a lot right now is also recognizing that when I am not in harm's way in my own life immediately is when I really have the opportunity to really center in my heart and come from that place of love. I think sometimes when you're in a crisis situation and the like you don't have to worry about like you're worrying about surviving. Like the last thing
yeah,
you need to be worrying about is finding love and forgiveness for the people who have put you in this crisis situation. But when I'm not, is when we can, those of us who aren't, that's when we can really hold space for this energy because it's this energy of compassion and empathy that's going to create real healing in our world. It isn't what we're seeing. It's not the division and the screaming and the hatred. That's just going to lead us to another version of what we're all trying to extricate ourselves from already. So
yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
just a big fan of like, how am I showing up? How can I be more loving? How can I honor what feels most true to me? How can I maintain my commitment to recognizing the humanity in every other human being? This is why I feel I'm here in the world. And this is where I feel the most at home in myself. So I'm just going to keep working at it and struggle through it when I'm like feeling hateful and nasty.
I just want to point out the fact that, what you said about survival is so, so true. It's hard to care about other people and to kind of sit with that if you're just trying to survive. And I think what happens for people is that they just can't see beyond their survival. So everything is a threat. Everyone is a grizzly bear, right? And so it's hard for us to have conversations about caring. And at the same time, I think it's our responsibility to help ourselves shift out of that survival. And what I mean is that you can be very abundant and still be in survival mode. You can't
Sure.
say to me that you are not making hundreds of millions of dollars and that's still not enough for you. You're coming from a place of lack, right? Like greed
Sure.
is just another perspective on lack because you're trying to throw money at something that it's clearly it's not about that. So what is it?
Sure.
And so each of us are responsible for helping ourselves through that journey of shifting away from survival into thriving. It's my responsibility to help myself through that journey through love and compassion. With the grace that you were talking about. It can feel challenging to do so. What helped you really tap into that during probably your most difficult moments?
Honestly, I think just bringing awareness to how I feel when I do tap into it. It's a completely different feeling in my being, right? It's the difference between like a general sense of peacefulness and at home in myself versus like this anxious, awkward, horrible feeling that is
Mm.
elicited through hatred or shaming others or dehumanizing others. Like there, as I said in the beginning, like it obviously in this human experience, it's not all about feeling good. Like the world is full of
Yeah.
insanity and also like outside of the insanity just very real painful things happen. People die in our lives,
Mm.
we have breakups in relationships, things that create pain, right? But essentially it's just the more awareness I bring to how I am feeling in the moment, in that moment of awareness is when you have an opportunity to redirect. If what you're thinking about is creating for you a lot of anxiety, a question I might ask myself is like, what else can I think about in this moment that might create a bit more peace? How can I steer my thoughts in a different direction? Like, ask myself generative questions that lead me to a different place. And if thinking about myself in the moment is, I'm cycling through self abuse and all it's creating for me is misery, then I encourage myself to think about anything else. Like quit thinking about myself if I can't do so in a way for in
Mm.
this moment that feels good. It's
Yeah.
like I'm going to think about my nieces and nephews who bring me joy, or I'm going to think about the cute puppy next door, or whatever it is. It's like we're not bound to thoughts that create for us misery and suffering. You know, we can
Yeah.
make different choices. And I think that all begins with awareness, like
Hmm.
really bringing, really checking in with yourself. I'm really anxious right now. Okay, what are you thinking about that might be creating that anxiety, and what can you do about those thoughts, if anything, in this moment?
You've just given us how to help us shift out of survival, right? Because we think that we get out of survival mode through external things. Like we have been taught that, once I have the paying job or once I have the partner, once I have all of these things, then I will be able to feel comfortable. And the more we control our environment, the more safe we will feel. But I think what you've just given us is the beginning on how to shift some of that perspective through that awareness and then making a different choice. And that requires consistency and that requires showing up for yourself, which I think is really important.
Absolutely. And you're speaking to safety, like feeling safe. And I think that, I came to this realization several years ago. It was heavy at first. It was this realization that, wow, no matter what choices I make, people are going to judge me. And that felt really heavy. It was this acknowledgement of how
Mm.
judgmental we all are, and how easily judgmental we all are and just tear each other apart. But then several moments later, I had the same realization from a completely different place. It was like, whoa, okay, so no matter what I do, some people are going to judge me. And it felt like this invitation. It felt like
Yeah.
liberation. It's like I can choose to
Yeah.
live in my box of conditioning, and that
Mm.
might be safer because I'm not putting myself out there in a more authentic, honest way.
Yeah.
Or I can choose to live in this liberated authenticity, and either choice is going to lead to some people judging me. So why would I ever choose the box when I can get the
Yeah.
benefits of living in my authenticity and liberation, you know?
I love that you said that. It's, like there is a level of freedom and understanding that no matter which way you go, you're not going to please some, so you might as well please yourself, right? Yeah.
Exactly, because the benefits that come from that are they just so greatly outweigh what could ever be created from the conditioned box of conformity.
Yeah. I have a little bit of a leaning question. When I look at the world and who is behaving in a way that I feel from my perspective does not align with love and compassion, it tends to be the white male.
Yeah.
And and so I always ask myself, like, what sort of world have we created for men in particular? Like, and I mean co-created as children, like what sort of messaging have men received that they seem to be the driving force, to be this catalyst of being the anti love, the anti compassion. And so I'm coming at a place from curiosity because I'm curious, how have we in ways sort of co-created this reality where you have this group of people that have this particular perspective that seems to contradict um, love and compassion?
Well, I would say a couple of things. First and foremost, I would say that it tends to be white men in power, which is why we're able to bear witness to people who are living outside of love and compassion and the laws that
Mhm.
they're creating. And but I don't think it is limited to white. I think, again, as I was saying
Mm.
earlier, what I've come to discover over these past years is I've been watching some of the most progressive voices and some of the people speaking
Mm.
most beautifully about loving your neighbor and then saying just the most toxic things around, their political rivals that for me is not an expression of love and compassion. So
Yeah.
so I feel like we're all wired to be jerks. We're all wired to,
Hmm.
and yet white men tend to hold the power. And so we're seeing it on a big stage just how toxic those energies can be. And I can't speak to
Yeah.
Canada, and I can only speak from my perspective to the US, but this country was founded on genocide, followed by slavery. I mean, we are an extraordinarily racist country in our bones. And I
Mm.
think that even though there has been some evolution away from racism, that this is still very present in the air we breathe. And if you grow up in the United States as a white person, again, I feel I'm a very progressive white
Yeah.
male, and I see the racism in me, and it isn't even conscious. It is just like wired into me. I see the way that I will sometimes react if I'm walking down the street and it's four black men, that
Mhm.
my antenna are going to go up in a different way than if it's four white men. And that is not even conscious. It's just like bred into me from growing up
Yeah.
in this country. Right. And
Yeah.
so for
Mm.
me, when that's happening for me, I do my best in the moment to just really acknowledge, like, hey, this is the internal racism from being born in a racist nation. This is what's happening in your head, it's what's happening in your fear, and it doesn't represent what you believe to be most true in your heart. At least to have that conversation with myself, so I'm not just letting myself be afraid of black men because we're told that black men are
Mhm.
dangerous
Mm.
and scary in this country. It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I'm
Mhm.
not really answering your question other than I don't believe that we have in any way raised men in general across the board in this country to be healthy versions of masculinity. And that's just from the masculinity front. That's not even addressing the racist front that we have to contend with in our country, or the sexist front, the misogynist front that all men are raised with to some degree too. It's the problem for me, Giselle, is that seeing, again, at least in our country now, the men in
Mhm.
control, from my perspective, they are men who are bound to this idea that women are less than, that other races are less than. So right now they're in power again, which is going to make it that much harder. We're certainly not going to have our schools suddenly having curriculum that, if anything, those types of curriculum are being eliminated from our schools. So,
I was going to say that I think you answered it beautifully because what you said was that we have all co created this. This is a long history of hate and racism that has been embedded within, and this person's a mirror of us, of all of our internalized racism and all of our fears and all of those things, and where you are taking responsibility. And I think that takes a level of, you said, honesty, authenticity, and grace. Is that you're acknowledging to yourself the things you need to heal within yourself so that you can embody that love and compassion. And it's hard for us as human beings to do that. I think sometimes shame and guilt comes up. I shouldn't feel that way. That shouldn't be. But the truth of the matter is, the only way to change it is if we acknowledge it. And
yes.
I mean, so I think it's huge for you to have even made that example of saying, like there's certain levels of me that have that internalized racism, and the only way that can change is if I acknowledge it, become aware of it, give it grace, and then choose to change. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned the concept of power. From my perspective, people that are trying to hold on to power and are trying to put power over, that's not true power. True truly powerful people don't need to disempower others. Their power comes from within. Um, and so what I'm seeing, I'm not seeing truly powerful people. I'm seeing truly powerless people that are desperately trying to cling to power.
But their
Mhm.
choices make a difference. Like they're
They
writing
do.
laws that affect millions of people. So there is power in what they're able to create, even if the reasons why they're seeking to create it aren't from this inner strength. It's fear
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
insecurity and yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that's what I call
Absolutely.
systemic power that they have, right? So systems power, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
but to what extent have people allowed or accepted this? We didn't just get here today. There's so many things that have slowly we've accepted that we have turned a blind eye on or not wanted to deal with, that we are here because of a series of steps that we have allowed, like the willingness to only love some people but not others. Any othering creates the conditions for racism. And that's hard for us. That's really, really hard to not see those other people over there that are writing these laws that are blatantly hurting people. It's hard to look at them and to say, I'm willing to love you. I'm
Yeah.
willing to see your humanity, even though you don't see mine or my people's.
To me,
And
that
that's
is
so
the
powerful.
greatest power, though. That is power. When
Yeah.
you can look upon someone that is extraordinarily difficult to like and still love them. I feel most powerful when I'm in my heart and when I'm in love. It's like I just feel like nothing can touch me in that space, not really. And I don't even need to like, I'm not committed to liking people. I'm committed to loving them. Like
Yeah.
there are
I love
people
that.
I don't see any path to liking certain people, honestly.
Yeah.
But I
Mhm.
absolutely can love them because love doesn't require me to like anything anyone's doing. Love just
Mm.
requires me to
Mhm.
remember this is another
Ooh.
human being who has walked an entire journey that had I been in their shoes and walked that journey, I could not honestly say that I wouldn't have landed in the exact same place they
Mm.
landed, saying and doing the exact same things they're saying and doing. And in that understanding is where empathy is built, is where
Yeah.
compassion is built. And so that's what helps me get there is I'm continuously reminding myself, I haven't lived their life. I can't relate to what they're saying and doing, but maybe had I lived their life, I would understand why they're saying and doing it. And so at least that opens my heart to them. Even if I'm going to be actively like saying something that's completely counter to what they're saying, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna like other them, as you say, and dehumanize. It doesn't do
Yeah.
anything.
I've had the pleasure of interviewing many people that have done extraordinary things like forgive. And the willingness to just understand completely changes people. The
Yeah,
willingness to just bear witness to their humanity
yeah,
has the power to transform. And we don't understand that. It's a true power from my perspective that we don't really understand. I
yeah.
know in your work in particular, you emphasize the importance of self-love and compassion for yourself. Why is that so important in terms of being able to love other people?
I believe our relationship with ourselves informs how we relate to everyone and everything else. So when I'm seeing people out there saying hateful things, one of the first things I think is this is a person who's not in a loving relationship with themselves, or they would
Yeah.
never be acting in this way. Because the more connected you are to self-love, the more naturally you extend love to others. It's the only possibility. For me, it's
Yeah.
like it's 1 + 1 = 2. There is no other possibility. And that's why I just can't imagine, I can't imagine a greater priority than strengthening, deepening, fostering a more loving relationship with yourself. We all know on the most basic level if you are well nourished and if you've gotten sleep, you're going to be kinder to the people in your life. You're going to show up differently
Yeah.
if you're feeling like you're taken care of and feeling good. How you show up is, and that's why people get caught up in this idea that self-love is selfish and you shouldn't be focused on yourself. You should be focused on others when in fact, yes, it's selfish. It's the most beautiful selfishness there is. Love is a pure positive energy. It only serves all. So self-love always transcends self, always,
Yeah.
every single time. So yeah, I feel like it's mostly what I talk about these days is the importance of self-love and the power of self-love, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I completely agree. It makes me think of that Wayne Dwyer analogy. He asks his audience, they're like, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? And everyone says, orange juice. And he's like, why? Because that's what's on the inside. And so when you have love in your heart for yourself, you can't help but love other people because that's what's on the inside, right? And especially when you're pressured. And so I agree that that's the work I think that each of us can choose to do. But it's so funny how we have, you know, incarnated in a world where that's not reinforced. You were talking about like people say it's selfish, it's narcissistic, the whole concept of narcissism. I don't think people understand the difference between narcissism and self-love. If you want to tackle it, by all means. And I think we've been programmed to focus on other. We haven't
Yeah.
been really that it's service to other, look at other.
Yeah, women are
Have
conditioned intensely around that. Always make sure everyone else is taken care of before you're taken care of. That makes a good woman. That makes a good mother. That makes, it's
yeah.
such nonsense. And yet, and even though
Yes. Thank you.
even though we're aware, there are many women listening to this who understand that that's nonsense, who are still affected by the conditioning because the conditioning has been from the time we're tiny kids until now.
Yeah.
And it's just like racism. It's like you know better, you understand the how irrational it is, and yet it's in you, so you're still reacting in alignment with this conditioning.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say something to what you said earlier too about loving ourselves. And one of the reasons it's so important is because I think that part of the reason we see so much rage and so much division is that people are not willing to be honest with themselves about the harder aspects of their personality and to look upon those with love. And so because people are shunning aspects of themselves, it becomes so much easier to point fingers at others and to make all the issues and all the problems about another person's actions. But the more you love yourself, the less inclined you are to hide aspects of yourself, the less inclined you are to shame and shun aspects of yourself.
Mm.
And naturally, the less inclined you are to point fingers at others because you're not needing to make excuses for your own bad behavior, your own unlikable traits. You're okay with who you are. So you're
Yeah.
not seeking out ugly things in others because you recognize you've offered yourself the grace of your own humanity. So you
Hmm.
recognize that in others more naturally. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. I found that the kinder I was to myself, the less self-critical, the less critical I was of other people, the
Yeah,
more
it's the
forgiving I was of
natural
my
way.
own flaws and follies, the less other people's flaws and follies bothered me.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, and it's amazing how that works. You wouldn't think that the two would be related, but they absolutely are. And so, but looking in the mirror can be really hard. When I was young, I faced some trauma and was actually raised by two traumatized people, parents that endured like child abuse, neglect, a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember when I was older and I was like really working hard at living my dreams and how do I make my dreams happen? And I remember sitting in meditation and what came up for me was something that I was shocked about because I would never had that negative self-talk that was obvious, like that negative self-talk, you suck, you loser, you're stupid.
Um,
Never that. But I remember sitting in meditation and I remember this feeling of I'm not worthy to live my dreams.
mm,
And that
mhm,
just hit me because I was like, where is that coming from? Why would I feel that way about myself? When that came up for me, I was like, I didn't know that was even in there. Like,
mhm,
where were you hiding? But yeah, and it was hard for me to look at my sense of unworthiness
mhm.
and be able to sit with it in a way that didn't want to make me shun it.
Yeah.
What do you find can really help people start to kind of sit with those aspects of themselves that make it hard for them to look at?
Uh, the first thing that's coming to me right now is just have a willingness to love yourself no matter what.
Oh.
literally, I think willingness is such a big part of this whole story and this whole journey. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I feel like that is the starting point. Are you willing to love yourself, no matter what you discover when you get honest with yourself? Because that willing, and can you stay committed to that willingness, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that willingness and that commitment to loving yourself no matter what is will be the first step, I think, that will nudge you into looking at the places inside that aren't easy to look at. And then remember that everything you find about yourself is entirely human. You, if you are thinking it and you are speaking it and you are
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it's human to think, feel. You're human, so it's got to be human. And you are so not the only one. No matter how insane you think your thoughts
Yeah.
are, or your problems, or your whatever,
Yeah.
you are so not the only one. And
Mm.
I'll use an example for myself. One of the hardest
Yeah.
things for me to to look at is how envious my mind can be. And
Mm.
my mind is
Mm.
just envies everyone for everything.
Mm-hmm.
It will
Yeah.
find reasons to envy everyone. And for
Yeah.
me, that is it's a really tough energy. It feels kind of
Mm.
gross to feel envious.
Yeah.
And yet, what I used to do is I used to pretend it wasn't happening. So I was talking to a
Mm.
friend years ago. He got a big promotion and a big raise at his job, and I was happy for him for like 10 seconds before my mind turned into envy. And so I'm talking
Yeah.
with him and I'm thinking, oh, now he's got this fancy job. He's way more successful than
Mm-hmm.
I am. All of these things playing through my mind.
Yeah.
But as I was talking to my friend, what I was doing was like telling myself, oh no, you're not envious, like pretending it wasn't happening, even though my whole body, because it's so monstrous to feel envious against a good friend, right? That's
Yeah.
how it felt
Yeah.
inside. And so what I do now, and that doesn't do anything, because if you're feeling envious, you're feeling envious.
Yeah.
You can try to put it away, but
Mm-hmm.
that it's not going anywhere. And if anything, the aspects of ourselves that we try to bury or put in the dungeon, they're going to be pounding on the door and
Yeah.
informing our words and choices in ways that we wouldn't want them to be. So suddenly you might be acting really passive aggressive with someone because really what you're feeling is envy. And instead of just
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging it in yourself and dealing with it in yourself, you end up projecting it onto another person. So, what I've
Yeah.
done now with envy is if I'm feeling it, what I'm saying, the internal dialogue is like, your mind's envious. It's entirely natural to be envious. Every human mind on the planet deals with envy at some times. Okay, envy too is welcome here. I might not like it, but I'm
Yeah.
sure as hell going to love it because I know that there's great benefit in creating friendship with everything that's going on within you. And anytime I try to shun or shame something, I'm going to war with a part of
Yeah.
myself, and it only creates war. It doesn't serve us. So what does
Mm.
love invite? It invites me to make room at the table for all aspects of who I am. And then what I find is if I can just be honest with my envy and also
Yeah.
recognize my envy is a product of my mind. And my
Mm.
mind is consistently lying to me. So
Yeah.
my envy is real, but it is not true. What's coming from my heart is most true to me. So
Yeah.
even recognizing that distinction helps me just be with my envy in a more casual way and remind myself, it's okay, you're human, no problem.
Mm.
What's next?
Mm.
What happens if we, for everyone listening, it's like, what happens if you approach the harder aspects of who you are, the things your thoughts are, your mind is thinking about you that aren't necessarily kind? What happens if you're like, oh, it's okay, it's just human. This is just a mind doing what all human minds do. Can you bring like an energy of curiosity and nonchalance to it instead of this heaviness, like I'm a piece of crap because my mind tells me I'm a piece of crap? No, you're
Yeah.
just a human being with a mind that's telling you lies like all human minds on the planet.
Yeah. And I love how much grace you offer to yourself because I think what you're saying also enables you to let go. And I find that when I let go and allow, that's really when my manifestations and things come through. Like for any of us who are like into this whole manifestation thing, right? One of the hardest things I had to learn about the whole thing, you're doing it to yourself. Right? Everything's like, right? you create these things for yourself. It's all coming from your mind, all of these things. And then when you create things that you don't like, there's a tendency to want to get angry at yourself because you're like, oh crap, I'm the source. Like nobody's gonna save me but me, but this sucks. Why did I create this? And so there's a tendency to go inward when you know too much. Right. Like when you stop looking out there and saying, I'm the victim, it's their fault. And you're like, oh crap, it's my fault.
Right, sure.
It can be hard to be kind to yourself and giving yourself that grace and understanding that you were just on your journey and other people's journeys are different. And yeah, they might be doing things that you're like, oh, wouldn't it be neat if I could just have these apple come out of nowhere or, like things appear out of nowhere? Wouldn't that be great? But giving yourself that kindness, I think, really goes a long way in terms of helping you evolve. It can feel hard, right? Especially when you realize you're like, oh, everything is my fault. But it's also a
All
good
of
thing
it,
too, because anything is your fault.
yeah,
So,
and
but
it is
everything
hard.
then is in your power, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the like liberation turn to
Yeah.
it, which
Yeah.
is wonderful. And
Yeah.
why not seek that perspective? Like why live
Yeah.
in the perspective it's all my fault when you could live in the perspective like, oh, it's all within my power. Right?
Yeah.
Like I'm consistently looking for ways to approach my life that support the possibility of deeper peace, more connection, more meaning.
Mhm.
So if I'm lost in a cycle of thought that I'm aware doesn't support that at all, it's incumbent upon me to look at new ways to think about things if I'm able. And we are able. If we're here and we're breathing, it's always what we do from this moment on that's going to matter the most. So there's always new opportunity to create transformation in our lives. And I want to just say that self-love invites, even when you're judging yourself, can you love the part that's judging, right? That's the
Yeah.
invitation of self-love. It's like if you want to be in real self-acceptance, then part of it, that acceptance is accepting the part of me that is unable to accept all the parts of me, because that part of me
Mm.
too is welcome
Mhm.
here. And
Yeah.
that when you can
Ooh.
open that way energetically, then it's
Hmm.
just, all right, I'm good with all of it. I'm good
Yeah.
with all of it, even the part that's not good with any of it, right?
Yeah. 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 What helped you attain this level of like inner acceptance? I know my audience are going to want to know. They're like, what is that guy drinking?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's just commitment because I'm also someone, my mind is as self-abusive as anyone else's mind, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
always living in this place of acceptance.
Yeah.
I'm someone who's consistently looking at, well, how
Mm.
am I feeling? What am I thinking that's making me feel this way? How can I work with what's going on here? So I'm not living in an overall state of acceptance all the time.
Hmm.
And I'm much more accepting of myself than I've ever been. I'm much more loving than I've ever been.
Mm.
So I've seen progress. And
Yeah.
because I see self-love as a skill. So, like
Hmm.
any skill, the more you practice at it, the better you're going to become. Self-acceptance is the same. The more you practice at it, the better you'll become. So, for those of you listening who are like, I have no idea how to accept myself, my guess is a lot of people aren't even entertaining the possibility. They're not even seeing it as something that is achievable. So start there. Recognize that your heart center, the energy of love within you is in full acceptance of who you are all the time,
Mm.
is never out of alignment with acceptance. So if you're struggling to find that acceptance, it's because you're in your mind. It's because
Yeah.
we're in our egos. So the invitation there is like, how do you get back into your heart? And how do you connect to your heart? How do you connect to anything in the world? If I want to connect to a friend, I'm going to reach out to my friend. I'm going to send an invitation. So when I'm feeling like I need more heart energy, it's like I pray to my heart. Please, love within me. I need you right now. I'm really lost in the cycle of my mind and could use your wisdom, could use your energy. I'll write letters to my heart. I'll write letters from my
Mm.
heart. Dear love, what would you have me know right now? And these are practices that tangibly engage us with an energy outside of our minds, with the voice of
Mm.
love. And the more often you are engaging with the voice of love, with the energy of love, the more natural it's going to become to find it. This is what I've noticed. This is a profound thing I've noticed in my life, is that when my mind is cycling through self-abuse, I'm aware of it much faster than I've ever been. In the gap
Yeah.
between the self-abuse and self-love, which may have been here, it just gets shorter and shorter
Mm,
and shorter. So you're not mired in this self-abusive talk as long. You get right back into, well, wait a minute. That's not true. I'm worthy. This is not, that mind doing that thing minds do. I'm worthy. I'm enough. I'm beautiful just as I am. Right. And you
mm,
just, with practice, that muscle builds so that that connection to your heart is just more available and resonant.
mm, I love that you said that. And I also feel like I asked you a question like psychically and then you answered it psychically, which is very weird. And I'll tell you why. So I was having a thought as you were talking. I was thinking about people that I know that felt betrayed by their heart. They felt like they fell in love with the wrong person, right? And so they felt betrayed by their heart and have a hard time. And then when I asked that question, I felt like something came back from you that was like, that's not the heart, that's their mind. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not going to ask that question. But it was funny because as you were talking, that's kind of what came back.
I love that you're bringing this up because a lot of people will say, I love too much and it just creates heartbreak for me or struggle. And I'm like, that's not love, honey. It's the
Yeah.
attachments to love, it's the expectations around the love. And as soon as you're attaching anything to love, it's no longer love. As soon as you're putting
Yeah.
expectations on love, it's no longer love. It's a creation of the mind. Love, as I said in the beginning, again, I speak from my experience. Love is a pure positive energy. It is
Yeah.
only of service. So
Yeah.
you are not hurting because you love. You're hurting because you have a whole bunch of stories that you are attaching to this idea of love, and those stories are creating
Yeah.
the suffering, in my
Yeah.
experience.
No, this is, yeah, that's so great. I wanted to ask you a few more questions. You mentioned enlightenment early in our conversation, and you were talking about how you kept seeking it and then it kept evading you. What helped you let go of the pursuit of enlightenment? And like, where do you find your journey now?
What helped me let go was really coming to understand that enlightenment is not something you achieve, right? It's not
Mm.
like the 10,000 hours idea that you become a professional or an expert in something.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
can be, you can give 10,000 hours to the pursuit of enlightenment, and it doesn't at all mean that you're going to be enlightened.
yeah.
That isn't my experience of how enlightenment works, and I
Mm.
don't even how many people are enlightened on this planet? Eight? I don't know. Like it's not
I have
many.
no
And there
clue.
are a
Yeah.
lot of people giving a lot of energy to their spiritual path and to their work. So that was the main thing. It was like, wait a minute, I have no control over this, whether I become
Mm.
enlightened or not. What I have control over is how I'm choosing to show up. What I have control over is how loving I am, how compassionate I am. That's the work I can do. And what I noticed for myself, Giselle, was that I was constantly judging myself against a more enlightened version, which is to say,
Yeah.
it's like I was responding in some way, and I'm like, if I were more enlightened, I wouldn't be responding the way I'm responding to. And why can't I be that way instead of just bringing acceptance to who I actually am and not needing to be a different version? Because really, and like for me, that is actually the essence of enlightenment, ironically, is
Yeah.
like full acceptance of who you are and how you're showing up in the
In
moment.
this moment. Yeah.
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 And so
Yeah.
it's like now I'm engaged with the work I'm doing I see myself as a messenger of love and a messenger of the power of love. And that's really
Mm.
what I feel most committed to. And that's enough, which doesn't mean that I'm also not seeking and working toward deeper peace and more personal responsibility and all these things that I believe
Yeah.
create a more fulfilling life.
Mm.
Absolutely. But it's without attachment to the goal of where that could all lead. It's just created
Yeah.
a lot of freedom. Like I don't expect to be enlightened in this lifetime. I don't need to be enlightened, and I'm going to continuously seek to become more loving and peaceful.
Mm.
Both
Mm.
things are true.
What what a beautiful way to summarize that. So, a couple more questions. I always ask all my guests, what is their definition of unconditional love?
Uh, Well, one, it's redundant because I don't believe love has conditions. So the
Beautiful.
moment you put a condition on love, it's not love. So I don't even usually say unconditional love, but
Yeah.
it's really just I see love as energy. That's
Mm.
my experience of love. So for me, it's just about aligning with that energy and acting from that place. So for me, when I'm in my heart, the message is, and what I love so much about connecting to my heart is there's no confusion. The message is always just love. And so, and then I'm like, even that person, and my heart's like, yeah, even that person, like, just love. So
Yeah.
that is
Mhm.
for me what love is. It's aligning with that energy and then moving forward with my words and actions in that place.
Oh,
And every time I do, I feel better in my life.
oh. The reason why I was reacting to that is because I remember I was in my bathroom getting ready for work, and I was working at a place that I loved, and I felt I had been doing all of these initiatives for the staff, and I didn't feel like that was acknowledged. I felt like people were just complaining, and I was like, oh, I can't believe it. I was doing all of these things, and they're complaining, and I heard a voice say to me, "Love them anyways." Love them anyways. And I was like, where did that come from? And I was like, oh, yeah, crap. Yes, that's right. Love them anyways, even though
Yeah.
you feel they might be giving you a hard time. Love them anyway.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
so
and
beautiful. It's so
yes, and
powerful.
it didn't
It's
come from like me. Maybe it came through me or like from my heart, but it was not an answer I was expecting. I was expecting
yeah, sure.
my higher self to be like, "Yeah, you're right. They suck. I can't believe they're not appreciating all." It was like, love them anyways.
Yeah, I love that.
So, last question: where can people work with you? Where can they find you? Where can they find your books and everything else that you want to offer? Please share.
Oh, thank you so much. I've got a couple books, Enough as You Are, and then Big Love, the paperback is finally coming out in late
Woo!
February after 7 years of
Oh,
being out there.
that's
So
perfect time.
those yeah, those two books. And then, my website's just scottstabile.com. I would love for people to find me through my newsletter though, which is scottstabile.substack.com.
Oh,
And then I'm
beautiful.
also being a lot more engaged with Insight Timer. So I'm going to be sharing more meditations and more live talks on that app because the energy of that app feels really resonant with me. I've taken myself out of Meta for potentially indefinitely, and we'll see. But I just want to be connecting with platforms that feel really good, and Insight Timer does right now, and Substack does right now. So
Mm.
yeah,
In particular, for listeners, Insight Timer offers free meditations, free lots of things
thousands
that
of
you can go. So please go check out Scott's work, check out his books, and thank you, Scott, for coming in and chatting with us. This was an amazing conversation, and I feel like just what I needed for this weekend from my soul. And please join us for another episode of the Loving Compassion podcast with Giselle.
Thank you
Have a
so
great
much.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.